Hello, I'm Noah Swanson.
I'm Kira Chappett.
I'm Colin Nelson.
I'm Suhao Liu.
And we are 3Dimensional Thinking.
The first step in the engineering design cycle is to ask.
When we first met, we began by discussing the project and our constraints. We knew the filter needed to be at least 25% printed material, and each component couldn't be larger than a 6-inch cube. We also knew our device must have 2 uses.
The next step is to imagine and brainstorm ideas.
Our first idea was a survival carabiner with a fire starter, compass, and whistle. But this product already exists and is not incredibly useful in most cases. We decided instead to make a water filter, which is useful for camping and could help with the clean water crisis in third world countries.
Next is to plan our design and gather materials.
We wanted to keep 2 things in mind when designing: functionality and creativity. Water filters have multiple layers to them to filter out particulates and impurities based on size. So, we decided to make stackable layers which would allow for materials to be easily replaceable. To do so, we designed one part that could be printed multiple times, which could be stacked and snapped in place to hold the materials. The cross-sections serve as both a shelf for the materials, activated charcoal, sand, and cotton pads, all wrapped in coffee filters, as well as a strainer for the water to pass through.
The next step is to create and test our design.
We printed the components in the DH Hill makerspace because several group members had access and because it was cheap and easy. The prototype was weak because it was printed on the lowest resolution, but the final product was strong enough because it was printed at a higher resolution.
The total cost of our materials was $21.84. But only about 1/4 of the materials were used, so the cost per filter ended up being about $5. The final step is to find out where we can improve. When testing our prototype, we found that it was too large and unstable, and the cotton in the top layer was loose and could potentially fall out. Also, the activated charcoal was leaking from the bottom layer. We improved by printing a smaller filter, printing it on a standard setting to get a sturdier product, and printing a top piece as a lid. We also added cotton in the funnel to catch the leaking charcoal.
Overall, FEDD went well for our team and we took first place. We had muddy water coming through the filter when the judges came by, but we realized that the judges had disturbed the filtering layer by taking the filter apart, and when we properly assembled the filter and flushed the sediments out of it, the water returned to clear. The judges liked the big picture thinking and told us we were one of the only teams whose product was directed toward a modern global issue.
In order to print a 100% food-safe product, we would need to print in PTEG using stainless steel hot ends, which are not available to us on NC State's campus. Our filter was printed using PLA and is just a proof of concept that a 3D printed water filter can be created and used successfully.
There are several things we would do differently if we did this project over again. We would test earlier and often, print the components earlier so we weren't rushed near the end, ensure correct filter assembly on the day of FEDD, print a prototype at high enough quality that it doesn't fall apart, and make each filtering layer thicker so water couldn't get around the materials.
Our advice for next year's freshmen is as follows. Get ahead of the game and start designing as early as possible. Test, test, and test again. Get your project running before the judges get there, because you could start it up in front of them and find out it doesn't work. They won't come back to you if you do end up fixing it. And finally, rehearse what you're going to say to the judges ahead of time. Don't just wing it.